The bolt cutter bit through the last link, and the cage door swung loose into the dark. 8 shapes did not move. They had learned that an open door was not the same as a way out. "Go," the man said, "before they wake." By nightfall, the whole clan would stand at his fence. His name was Hale. He had bought the farm at the bottom of the valley because it was cheap, and it was cheap because nothing on it worked. Broken fences, sagging roof, dead fields. He had walked the land once, slow, counting the things he would have to fix, and the list had not frightened him. He had done harder things. The barn leaned sideways like a tired man. The well rope had gone stiff and green. Out past the last fence post, the dry brush ran on to a low ridge, and the ridge stood over the house the way high ground always stands over low. He did not look at it much. Some things watch you back, and a man learns not to give them the chance. He had buried a wife 2 winters back. That was the harder thing. The land did not know it, and he liked the land for that. The land asked nothing of him and offered nothing back, and for a long time that had been enough. He rose before the sun each morning and worked until his hands ached. He could mend a fence, he could patch a roof, he could turn dead soil and coax something out of it if it came to that. The work did not care who he was or what he had lost. It only asked to be done, and he did it. In the evenings, he sat on the porch step and held a small flat stone in his palm. River stone, grey, worn smooth, the kind of weight a stone has after it has been underwater a long time. She had carried it in her coat. He did not know why. He had stopped asking the questions that had no answers, but he kept the stone and he turned it over with his thumb until the light went. Some nights he talked to her. Not out loud. He had stopped expecting an answer, and the not expecting had become its own kind of company. The raiders came through the low country every few weeks. He heard them before he saw them. The slow rhythm of hooves on dry earth, the creak of a cart riding heavy. He did not go to the road. A man who keeps to his fence keeps his fence. But that evening, the cart had stopped near his gate, and he had heard a sound from inside it that was not an animal. He stood very still and listened. It came again, low and tired and human in the way that grief is human, even when the throat that makes it is not. He should have gone back to the house. He knew the cost of stepping into other people's trouble, and he had paid it before. He stood at the fence for a long time and said nothing. Then he went to the barn for the bolt cutter. He did not think of it as mercy. He did not think of it as anything yet. It was the kind of thing a man does when his hands have gone on ahead of his reasons. The cart was unguarded. The lock was cheap. The cage was full of eyes, 8 of them, tall, even folded down in the dark. They watched him work the cutter without a word, the way you watch weather you cannot stop. The last link gave. The door swung, and the night, which had asked nothing of him for 2 winters, opened its mouth. The 8 didn't run. That was the first thing he understood. A door had opened into the dark, and not one of them had bolted through it, and a man learns to read a thing like that. They were too weak to run, or too used to traps to believe in doors. Maybe both. He stepped back from the cart and let the cutter hang low at his side, down where a hand could see it was not raised. "I am not with them," he said. He tipped his head toward the road, where the raiders' fire still showed small and orange against the hill. "And I am not here to take you somewhere worse." For a long time, nobody answered. The night held its breath, the way a room does, when everyone in it is deciding whether to be afraid. Then one of them came down out of the cart. Tall, even folded under the low roof of it, taller still when her feet found the dirt. She set her weight down slow, the way a person tests ice, and she did not take her eyes off him while she did it. "Why?" she said. One word, flat, more weather than question. "Heard you," he said. "Could not go back in the house, knowing what I heard." She looked at the cutter. She looked at the far fire. She looked at him, longer than was comfortable, reading him the way he had read the 8 of them. "Men do not cut us loose," she said. "They put us in carts. They sell what is in them." "I am not selling anything," he said. "I do not want trouble. I want to go to bed." It was not a kind thing to say, and he did not mean it kindly. It was just true, and the truth was the only thing he had left to hand a stranger. She seemed to weigh it. Truth has a different sound than a trap, and she had heard enough of both to know the difference. Behind her, the other 7 had come to the cart's edge, low and watchful, a row of eyes catching what little light there was. None of them spoke. They were waiting on her, he understood, the way men wait on the one who counts. Up close, he could see what the cage had done. Wrists rubbed raw where the rope had held them. Ribs a man could count through the skin. They had been in that cart a long time, and not one of them had been fed for the keeping of it. A man does not starve what he means to care for. He starves what he means to sell, and only enough to keep it walking to the buyer. He did the only thing he could think of. He set the cutter down on the boards of the cart, in plain sight, and he stepped back from it. 3 full steps, so the iron lay closer to their hands than to his. "Well is by the barn," he said. "Water is clean. Take what you need." She did not move toward the well. "And in the morning," she said. "What do you want in the morning?" "Nothing," he said. "In the morning I have a fence to mend." Then he turned his back on 8 strangers in the dark, which was either trust or foolishness, and he was too tired to tell the 2 apart. He walked toward the house. He did not look to see if they followed. He did not look to see if they ran. What he felt, climbing the porch step, was not safety. It was not even calm. It was the smaller thing that lives under those. The feeling of a man who had stopped waiting for the floor to fall and found it still holding under his boots. They came at dusk the next day, and they came quiet. That was the part that turned him cold. Not the number of them, though the number was bad. It was the quiet. A loud enemy wants a thing you can still hand over. A quiet one has already done its deciding. He had been mending the south fence when the small sounds of the valley went out, all at once, the way a room hushes when a door opens behind you. He straightened, the whole day's ache in his back, and looked to the ridge, and the ridge was not empty anymore. They lined it the way fence posts line a field. 40, maybe more. He did not count past the first row, riders and walkers both, and every one of them looking down at his small house with its sagging roof and its one thin column of smoke. He set the hammer down in the dirt. He did not pick up anything else. The 8 had come out of the barn behind him. He heard them before he saw them, the soft press of feet on hard ground. They did not run up to the ridge, and they did not run from it. They stopped in a row between his house and the high ground, which put them between him and their own. The tall one stepped up beside him. "They are yours," he said. "If they want you, go." "They do not want us," she said. "They counted us dead. They came for the men who took us." She looked at him. "And for the man who has us now." A single rider came down off the ridge. Slow, hands open on the reins, which is a thing a careful enemy does so that it is seen being done. He stopped a stone's throw out. He looked at the house. He looked at the 8. He looked at Hale standing in his own dirt with no iron in his hands, and something worked behind his face. "You opened the cart," the rider said. "I did," said Hale. "Why?" It was the same word she had used the night before. He gave the same answer, because it was still the only true one he had. "Heard them in there. Could not leave it." Nobody moved. Not one rider on the ridge shifted in the saddle. The 8 held their line. The smoke went up thin and straight, because even the wind had decided to wait and see. Then the tall one spoke, not to Hale, and not in his tongue at first, and then in it, for him to hear. "He fed us. He set the iron closer to our hands than his own. He turned his back on 8 strangers and went into sleep. She let it sit. The men who caged us did none of those things. Judge him by what he did, not by what his kind has done. The rider was quiet for a long time. What crossed his face then was not warmth, and it was not trust. It was the smaller, harder thing under both. The recognition that this was different ground than he had ridden down expecting to find. "We camp the field tonight," the rider said. "We take nothing of yours. In the morning we talk." "In the morning," Hale said. "I have a fence to mend. You can talk while I work." The rider did not smile. He came close to it and let it go. He turned his horse. It was not peace. It was not even a promise of peace. It was only the absence of the thing he had braced for, and after 2 winters of bracing for everything, the absence sat on him almost like a hand laid flat on the shoulder. The talk in the morning did not take long, because Hale did most of it with his hands. He went out to the south fence at first light, the way he had said he would, and he worked. The ridge watched him. The field below it had filled overnight with the low shapes of the clan's camp, smoke and hide, and the stamp of horses. But no one came down, and no one drew anything, and after an hour a man stops listening for it. Then a shadow fell in beside his. The tall one had come without a word. She took up the second hammer from the dirt, the one he had set down the night before, and she held a post while he drove it. She was strong in a way that made the work look like a smaller thing than it was. They did not speak. There was nothing the work needed them to say. On the second day, 2 more came. They did not ask what to do. They watched what his hands did, and then their hands did the same, and the fence went up faster than it had gone up in 2 years. On the 3rd day, he found a bowl on the porch step, roots boiled soft, and a strip of dried meat he did not know the name of. No one stood near it. No one waited to see him find it. He ate it on the step with the grey stone in his other hand, and it was the first food in a long while that he hadn't cooked for himself, and that was a stranger feeling than he had thought it would be. That evening he carried the empty bowl down to the edge of the field and set it on a flat rock where it would be found, and he did not stay to be thanked. It was a small thing. Most of what passed between them in those days was small. A man who has lost the big things learns to count the small ones. The way he counts coins he did not know were still in the lining of an old coat. On the 4th day, the smallest of the 8 slipped on the wet well stones and opened her palm on the iron rim. She did not cry out. She held the hand against her chest and went very still, the way the whole of them went still when something hurt, as if pain were a thing you could hide by refusing to move around it. Hale crossed the yard. He did not ask. He took the hand, turned it up to the light, and looked. The cut was clean but deep. He went inside for the cloth and the small brown bottle his wife had kept on the shelf, and he came back, and he knelt in the dirt and washed the cut and bound it the way he would have bound his own. The tall one watched the whole of it from the barn door. She did not help, and she did not stop him. When he was done, she said one thing. "You did not have to do that." "No," he said. He gathered up the cloth. "Did it anyway." She looked at him for a long time then, the way she had looked at him that first night over the cutter, reading him, but it was a different reading now. The first night she had been checking him for the trap. This was something else. This was a person turning over a thing she had believed her whole life and finding that the new shape of it didn't cut her the way she had braced for it to. It was not trust. Not yet. It was the ground that trust grows in, turned over and lying open. And in a field of dead soil, a man learns to know that ground the moment he sees it. The first time they ate together, all of them, it was not planned. It just happened, the way weather happens. He had killed the lame goat that morning, because it would not last the winter, and there was more meat than one man could use. The tall one saw him standing over it, unsure of the work, and she took the knife from his hand and showed him a faster way, and by the time the sun was low, there was a fire in the yard, and a pot over it, and the smell of it carried down to the field. They came up in 2s and 3s, the 8 first, then a few from the camp, then the rider who had spoken on the ridge, who sat at the edge of the light where he could keep an eye on the road. Nobody said it was allowed. Nobody said it was not. They just sat. Hale set out what bowls he had, which was not enough, so most ate from the pot or off flat stones, and he gave up his own chair and sat on the ground by the fire. He did not think about it. He just did it. A child came and sat in the gap beside him. She was small, smaller than the smallest of the 8, with the loose, unhurried way of someone too young to have learned to be afraid of much yet. She had a stick. She was drawing in the dirt with it, lines that did not add up to a picture. "This is the river," she said. To no one. To him. "The river goes around the mountain because the mountain told it to. The mountain is very old. It remembers when the sky was lower. My grandmother says the sky used to sit on the hills like a lid on a pot, and the wind pushed it up a little every year, and that is why the wind is tired now and only blows in the evenings." It was not true, probably. It did not need to be. He listened to all of it, the river and the lid and the tired wind, and he did not correct a single word. And when she ran out of story, she leaned against his arm and looked into the fire as if she had just settled a great matter. Across the flames, the tall one was watching the two of them. She did not smile. Her people did not seem to spend smiles cheaply, but something in her face had eased, the braced thing in it gone slack for a moment, and that was its own kind of smile, if a man knew how to read it. He looked past the fire at the dark shape of his farm. The south fence stood straight now, every post true. The roof showed new boards pale against the old. In the turned field, in rows he had not had the heart to plant for 2 years, something had been put into the ground that week by hands that were not only his. He had not built any of it to be a home. He had built it because his hands needed something to hold. But sitting there with a child against his arm, and the pot going empty, and the fire full of faces, he understood that a thing can become what you never built it for. The word for what this was getting close to was one he had buried 2 winters back, and had not said out loud since. He did not say it now either. He just sat, and let the fire do the talking, the way it had always been better at it than he was. The night the others slept, the 2 of them stayed up with the fire. That was not planned either. The camp had gone quiet, and the 8 had bedded down in the barn, which they had taken to without anyone deciding it should be theirs, and the child had been carried off asleep. Only the 2 of them were left, him on the step, and her on a stump she had rolled up to the warmth, and the fire between them going down to coals. For a long time neither of them said anything. That was the easiest talk he knew, the kind with no words in it. Then she asked about the bottle. "The brown bottle?" she said. "The cloth. The chair you do not sit in. A man keeps a dead woman's things the way you keep these. Careful. Like they might break a second time." He looked at the coals. He told it plainly, because plain was the only way he could tell it without it taking him apart. A fever. 2 winters back. It had come up through the low country and taken the weak and the old, and then it had passed over him and taken her instead, who was neither. There had been a child coming. There was not after. He had put them in the same ground because there had not seemed to be a reason to dig 2 holes. He had not said most of that out loud to anyone, and saying it now did not heal it, but it set it down for a moment, the way you set down a thing you have carried so long you forgot it had a weight. She did not say she was sorry. Her people did not seem to keep the habit of it. She let it sit in the firelight where he had put it, and then she gave it the only thing worth giving, which was the same weight back. She had been a mother twice, she said. The first was grown and gone to another camp, alive somewhere, which was its own kind of losing. The second was in the ground a long way north. The raiders had not made her what she was. They had only found her already broken and decided that broken things were still worth coin. She had stopped expecting the floor to hold under her a long time ago. She had been surprised, these last days, to feel it holding. He took the grey stone out of his pocket then. He did not know why he did it, except that the night seemed to ask for something true to be set down between them, and the stone was the truest thing he owned. Hers, he said. She carried it. I never knew why. The tall one looked at it without reaching. Then she reached and touched it with 2 fingers, lightly, the way a person handles things that are fragile and that matter. Some things you carry are not for a reason, she said. Some you carry so your hand has a weight in it, so you do not float off the ground. He had carried that stone for 2 winters as a piece of his grief, and nothing else. Sitting there, watching her 2 fingers rest on it, he understood it had become something more than that now, or could. Not only a thing the dead had held, a thing the living could pass across a fire. He did not say that. He put the stone back in his pocket, but he had felt the braced thing in his own chest, the part that had stood guard for 2 winters straight, go quiet for the length of 1 breath, and a man does not forget the first night the guard sits down. Then the notice came. It came on a Tuesday, in the hand of a thin man on a tired horse who did not want to be there. He wore the grey coat of the county, and he held the paper out at arm's length, the way a man holds a thing he would rather not be holding. Hale read it twice. The words were plain enough under the official dressing. A complaint had been filed. Persons of the Orc kind were reported camped and labouring on the Hale land, in number, and questions had been raised. Whose questions, the paper did not say. About what, it did not quite say either, but a man could read the shape of it well enough. About whether a farm at the bottom of the valley had any business filling up with the wrong sort of neighbour. I only carry them, the thin man said, before Hale could speak. I do not write them. You understand. There has been talk in town. There is always talk in town, Hale said. This kind has a name behind it. The clerk looked past him to the field, where the camp went on with its evening, the way it had every evening, and he lowered his voice, though no one stood near. A man named Corwin has been asking at the registry about this deed, about who holds it, and whether they hold it clean. He folded his empty hands. I would not want to be standing where you stand when Corwin decides he has found an answer he likes. The tall one had come up to the porch by then. She did not speak. She read the clerk, and she read the paper in Hale's hand, and the old braced stillness came back into her like a coat she had taken off too soon and was now putting on again. It is only a paper, Hale said. To her. Not to the clerk. It is always only a paper, she said, until it is men. He knew the deed was clean. He had bought the farm with the last of what the army owed him, and a sum his wife had kept in a tin, and the paper that said so was in the box under the bed. Clean did not always matter. A clean deed in a poor man's hand was only ever as clean as the men who chose to read it. He had known that before the Orcs ever came up the road, and it had not changed his mind about the cart, and it did not change it now. He folded the notice once and put it inside his shirt. He did not raise his voice. He did not hand the clerk a promise or a threat, because a man who keeps his fence does not waste either one on the messenger. You have carried it, he said. It is carried. Take water at the well before you ride. It is a long way back in the dark. The thin man looked at him a moment, surprised at the offer or at the calm under it, and then he went to the well and drank, and the 8 watched him do it and did not stop him, and that too was a kind of answer he would carry back, whether he meant to or not. He mounted up. At the edge of the yard he stopped. They say you cut 8 loose from a raider's cart, he said. Is it true?" "It is true." The clerk nodded slowly, the way a man nods when a thing he half believed settles down into the believed half. "Then you ought to know," he said. "Corwin owned that cart." He rode off into the dusk. For a long time, Hale stood with the notice against his chest and watched the dust go down on the road. And the road, which had brought him 8 strangers and a clan, and the first quiet of 2 winters, was not finished bringing things up the valley yet. Corwin came on a Thursday, and he did not come alone. He came with 6 riders and a paper of his own, and he came in the full middle of the day, which a man does when he wants to be seen doing it. He sat his horse at the gate and did not get down. He was not a big man. Hale had learned a long time ago that the dangerous ones rarely were. Big men did not need to be careful. Corwin had the careful look of someone who had gotten what he had by counting it twice. "You have something of mine," Corwin said. "I have a farm," said Hale. "Everything on it is mine or no one's." 8 head. Corwin's eyes went past him to the field, counting again. "Bought and paid for, lawful, hauled in my cart. You opened my cart. In this county that is theft, and a man can lose a deed to settle a theft. I have asked after it. I have the asking in writing." He held up the paper. He did not offer it. The paper was not for reading. It was for showing, the way the 6 riders were not for fighting yet, only for showing. "They are not head," Hale said. "They are not yours. A cart does not make a man property because you nailed a lock on it. The county does not care what you think a man is." Corwin smiled, and none of it reached the rest of his face. "The county cares whose name is on the paper. Mine is on 2 now. The cart and the complaint. Hand them back, pay the cart's worth, and I ride off content. Keep them, and I come back with the law at my shoulder and take the land instead. Either way, I leave this valley with more than I rode into it with. That is how it has always gone for me." He said it the way a man reads weather. Settled. A thing already done. Then the tall one moved. She came down off the porch and crossed the yard and stopped at Hale's right shoulder, close, where the 6 could see the size of her. She did not draw anything. She did not have to. Behind her, the 8 came out of the barn, and the field both, and they did not run, and they did not shout. They only came and took their places. 1 to Hale's left, 2 more behind him. The rest spread along the fence line, quiet until the yard that had held 1 tired man held a wall of them instead. Nobody spoke. Not one of them shifted his weight. The only sound was the horses, gone uneasy under riders who had come, expecting 1 man, and found a yard that looked back. Corwin studied the wall of them for a long time. He was counting. Hale could see him do it, the small movement behind the eyes, weighing 6 against the yard, and the sum not coming out the way he had ridden in sure it would. He gathered his reins. He was too careful a man to spend riders on a count he was not certain of. Not today. "Land like this," he said, easy to no one, and to all of them, has a way of changing hands. Bad title, bad neighbors, a dry season, and a careless fire. He turned the horse. "We will be back. Count on the law next time, and count on more than 6. They rode out the way they had come in, slow, so it would not look like leaving. The tall one watched the dust until it was gone off the road. Then she said the thing Hale was already thinking. "He did not come to take them today," she said. "He came to see how many we are. Now he knows. And now he will bring enough." Corwin came back with the law, the way he had said he would. He came at first light 3 days later, and this time the count was different. Beside him rode a man with the county star on his coat and a writ in a leather case, and behind the 2 of them rode more than 6. Hale counted to 20 and stopped, the way he had stopped at the ridge the first night. Past a certain number the number quits meaning anything but trouble. They drew up along the road below the fence in a long line, and the dust they raised hung over them and would not settle, and the morning light came up gold over the ridge and poured down into the valley the way it always did, indifferent to every part of it. Hale walked out to the fence and stood at his gate. He had no weapon. He had decided that the first night, and he did not change it now. A man who picks up iron has already told the other man what kind of day it is going to be. He wanted it to stay a different kind of day as long as it could. He was not alone at the fence for long. The tall one came and stood at his right. The smallest of the 8 came and stood at his left. The cut hand healed now to a pale seam. The other 6 spread along the fence, one to a post, the way fence posts stand, driven into the ground and not going anywhere. Then the ground began to sound. He felt it before he heard it, up through his boots. The clan was coming down off the ridge, not riding, walking, all of them, the whole camp, the old and the young, and the rider who had spoken that first dusk, coming down the slope in a long, unhurried line until they filled in behind the fence, behind Hale, behind the 8, a wall standing at the back of a wall. The child was somewhere among them. He did not look for her. He did not want Corwin to see him look at anything he was afraid to lose. Nobody spoke. Not one horse moved on the road. Not one figure shifted behind the fence. The gold light filled the whole valley and found nothing in it that moved except the dust, still hanging, refusing to come down. A bird crossed the field and didn't call. The horses on the road tossed against the bits and were held. Even the thin smoke from the house had gone to nothing, as if the farm itself had stopped breathing to listen. The lawman looked at the line behind the fence. He looked at the writ in his hands. He had ridden out to serve a paper on one man over 8 head, and he had found a valley standing up on its feet, and the arithmetic of his morning had changed under him. Corwin saw it too. Hale watched him see it. He sat his horse very still, and behind the careful eyes the counting began. Not loud. Corwin did nothing loud, but Hale had spent a season watching men weigh a thing before they did it, and he knew the look of a sum being worked. Corwin was counting the guns at his back against the wall at the fence. He was counting what a writ was worth against what it would cost to serve it. He was counting, and the count was taking longer than he had ridden in planning for it to take, and that was the first good sign Hale had seen all morning. The tall one spoke, low, so only he could hear it. "He is deciding," she said. "I know." "Whatever he decides," she said. "We do not move first." "No," Hale said. "We do not move at all." And the whole valley held, gold and silent and full of held breath, and waited on one careful man to finish the hardest arithmetic of his life. The arithmetic took a long time, and then it was done. Hale knew the moment it finished. He had watched men reach the end of a sum before. There is a stillness that comes after, the stillness of a man who hauls his answer, and is only deciding whether he can live with it. Corwin didn't like his answer. He had ridden in, counting 8 head and 1 tired widower. He had counted again at the gate the week before, and made it 1 man and a wall, and decided a wall could be gone around with paper. Now the paper sat useless in the lawman's hands, and the wall had grown a second wall behind it, and the sum he had come to collect had turned into a sum he would have to pay. The lawman settled it first, in his own way. He looked at the writ. He looked at the valley standing on its feet. Then he turned his horse a quarter, sideways to the fence, which is what a man does when he has decided not to ride at a thing. "This is more than a writ," the lawman said. He said it to Corwin, not to Hale. "You brought me out for 8 head and did not say a word about the rest. I do not serve this today. Take it to the county seat if you have the stomach for it. I am going home." He rode. He did not look back, and the men he had sworn in peeled off after him in twos, glad of the excuse, until the long line on the road was not a line anymore. It was only Corwin and the few that were truly his. Corwin sat a moment longer. Hale watched the thing move across his face. It was not fear. A man like Corwin did not keep enough soft in him to be afraid. It was the other thing, smaller and more useful. The recognition that this was a different kind of ground than he had ridden down expecting to find, and that ground a man does not understand, is ground he does not fight on. He looked at Hale a long moment, one careful man to another. 8 head, he said. All this. Over 8 head. They were never head, Hale said. That was the whole of your mistake. You counted them. We did not. Corwin had no answer for that. He had built his life on the count, and ridden into the one place the count did not work, and there was nothing in his ledgers for it. He pulled his reins. He did not threaten the land again. He did not promise to come back. The threats had gone out of him. Not because he had turned kind, but because a threat is a thing a man spends when he thinks it will buy him something, and he had just watched his buy nothing in front of 20 witnesses. A careful man doesn't keep spending coin that doesn't work. He turned the horse and rode, and the few that were his went with him, and the dust they raised going was the same dust they had raised coming, except that this time the valley let it settle. Nobody cheered. That was not their way, and it had never been his. The wall behind the fence did not break apart or shout. It only, slowly, became people again. An old woman lowered herself to sit. A child was let loose to run. The 8 breathed out as one long breath finally let go. The tall one stood at his shoulder and watched the road stay empty. He will not come back, she said. It was not a question, but there was the edge of one under it. No, Hale said. Men like him do not come back to the place that cost them more than it paid. He will go find an easier valley. And the sun stood up full over the ridge, and the gold went out of the light and became ordinary day, and the worst morning of the season was over with not one blow struck in it. The days after were quiet in the way that good days are quiet, which is to say nothing in them was worth telling, and all of it was worth living. The clan did not break camp. Hale had half expected them to, the threat gone and the road open, and a part of him had braced for the morning he would walk out and find the field empty and the 8 gone with it. The morning came, and the field was not empty. It seemed the danger had settled a thing the safety had only circled. They stayed. Work filled the space the fear had left behind. There was always work. The well wanted a new rope, and the roof still needed boards on the north side, and the planted field had come up green and crooked and wanted thinning. He did the work, and the 8 did it with him, and the clan did the larger share of it, and the farm that one man had not been able to hold began to look like a place that could hold a great many. He did not give the speeches a man might give. He had never had the words for the big moments, and he did not find them now. He handed a tool across, and it was taken. He set out bowls, and they were filled. In the evenings, the fire went up in the yard, and the child told her circling stories to whoever would sit, and the tall one sat near him in the companionable quiet that had stopped needing a reason, and that was the whole of it. And it was enough. One evening he stood at the mended fence and looked back at the place. He tried to find the word for what it had become. Not a camp. A camp moves on. Not just a farm anymore, either. The word that kept coming was family, and every time it came, he set it down again, because the word was too small for the thing, and using it felt like calling the whole valley by the name of one stone in it. He took the grey stone out of his pocket. He had carried it 2 winters as a piece of what he had lost. He turned it over in the last of the light, and it did not feel like that any more. It was warm from his pocket and worn smooth from his thumb, and it had been touched, once, across a fire, by a hand that was still living. It was not a stone he carried because someone was gone. It was a stone he carried because someone had stayed. He did not put it back in his pocket that night. He set it on the windowsill of the house, where the morning light would find it, The way you set down a thing you no longer need to keep against your skin to be sure of it. The tall one watched him do it from the doorway. She did not ask what it meant. She seemed to know, the way she had come to know most of what he did not say out loud. "My grandmother had a saying," she said. "A house is not the walls. It is the people the walls decided to keep." "Your grandmother and that child," Hale said, "have a great many sayings between them." "We are a people of sayings," she said. "We lost most of the rest of it. You hold on to what you can carry." He thought about that for a long time after, the part of him that had stood guard in his chest for 2 winters, gone quiet now, and staying quiet. Some things you carry because they are heavy. Some you carry because, if you set them down, you would not know your own hands without them. Spring did not arrive all at once. It came the way good things come, a little at a time, so that no one could say which morning it had started. The planted field came up, not all of it, and not straight, but enough. The crooked rows greened and then bent under their own weight, and one evening Hale stood at the edge of them and understood he would have more than he could eat, more than the 8 could eat, more than the whole camp could eat before the snow came. The thought of too much was a thought he had not had in 2 winters. The roof was whole now, every board true. The well gave clean water. The barn that had leaned like a tired man stood straight, because a great many hands had pushed it up and held it there while it learned to stand on its own again. He did not call it his farm any more, not even in his head. He did not have a better word for it, only the sense that the old word had stopped fitting. He let it go unnamed. Some things do not need a name to be known. The child grew taller over the season, and her stories grew longer, and no one corrected a single one of them. The tall one's grown child, the one gone to another camp, sent word in the spring that she was well, and the tall one read the word by the fire and said nothing for a long time, and then she put it away in her coat. Next to wherever it was, she kept the things that mattered. In the evenings they ate together, all of them, the way they had that first night, and every night since. It was not quite a family. The word was still too small for it. It was the thing a family is made of, gathered from the pieces that were lying around, by people who had stopped waiting to be given one, and had built it instead, out of what they had. On a clear night near the end of spring, Hale stood at the mended fence and looked out past it, the way he had taught himself not to look in the bad years. Far off, where the road came down out of the hills into the valley, a light was moving. A single lantern, small with the distance, swaying with the gait of a horse or a slow cart. It was too far to know what it was. A traveler, a trader, someone lost or someone running. He watched it come on, that one small light in all that dark, and he felt the old needle at the back of the neck, the one that warns you when the world is not finished with you yet. Behind him, the fire was warm, and the voices were low, and the grey stone sat on the window-sill, catching the last of the light. Whatever was on the road, it was not here yet, and whatever it wanted, it would come down to find a valley that no longer belonged to one tired man alone. He watched the light a while longer. Then he went into the fire, and he left the door open behind him, because the world beyond the fence had not finished moving, and a man learns to leave a door open for whatever is still coming. Did you enjoy the story? Subscribe to the channel to watch more stories like this one. Leave a like. It helps the channel a lot. And drop a comment down below. I always read them and use your feedback to make our content better. Thanks so much. Channel name.